स्वागत है जी एक बार फिर ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨਵੀਂ ਤਾਜ਼ੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਪਿੱਛੋਂ। ਸੋ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਮੁੱਖ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਹੋਣਗੇ ਐਵਨ ਡਾਇਰ CBC ਦੇ ਸੀਨੀਅਰ ਜਰਨਲਿਸਟ। ਹਰਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਨਿੱਜਰ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਪੰਨੂ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਨਵੀਂ ਡਿਵੈਲਪਮੈਂਟਸ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਲੰਬੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੋਂ ਇਸ ਕੇਸ ਨੂੰ ਫੋਲੋ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਅਨੀਤਾ ਆਨੰਦ ਭਾਰਤ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਆਈ, ਜੋ ਮੋਦੀ ਨੂੰ ਉੱਥੇ ਮਿਲੀ, ਐਸ ਜੈ ਸ਼ੰਕਰ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੀ ਸੁਖਾਵੇਂ ਮਾਹੌਲ 'ਚ, ਇਸ ਦੇ ਕੀ ਅਰਥ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ, ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਐਵਨ ਡਾਇਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਡੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਖਾਸ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ। ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜੇਕਰ ਸਾਡਾ YouTube ਚੈਨਲ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਤਾਂ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਕਰੋ ਅਤੇ ਬਾਕੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਪ੍ਰੇਰੋ। ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਅਤੀ ਧੰਨਵਾਦੀ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ। ਆਓ ਸੁਣੀਏ ਹੁਣ ਐਵਨ ਡਾਇਰ ਦੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ। So Evan, thanks for joining me. Thanks for being my guest.
My pleasure to be here, Gurpreet. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. So Evan, what can you tell us briefly about this piece of evidence in your story, which seems to be very central in the investigation of Hardeep Singh Nijjar case?
Well, the evidence that's coming out, it appears in the court in New York starting on November 3rd, is going to be more detailed and include elements that we haven't seen before, including, of course, a brand new video. The video that we've all seen is the one that was from the parking lot of the Gurdwara in Surrey. It shows the killers approaching Hardeep Singh Nijjar's truck from a distance and firing on him, but it doesn't show him in the same kind of close-up detail that this video will. This is a 7-second video shot allegedly by the killers as proof that they had carried out their assignment. And it's shot directly from the side of the truck looking through the open door or open window on the driver's side. And it shows Hardeep Singh Nijjar slumped over his steering wheel with bullet holes, it appears, or at least blood, let's say blood stains on his neck and chest. And of course, that video was shared between people who are allegedly co-conspirators in a second murder for hire conspiracy, which is the one targeting Gurpatwant Singh Pannu in New York. So that's one element, a video element that's new. But there's also new audio elements, wiretap. We knew that wiretap existed, but we hadn't seen transcripts. Now we have seen a preview of some of the transcripts that are likely to be introduced at trial. And of course, the suggestion is that that's only part of what we may see in the actual trial itself. But they do appear to show quite close coordination between the, let's say, not directly between the killers of Hardeep Singh Nijjar and the supposed killer, who was actually, as we now know, an undercover federal agent in New York, but that they were both communicating with the same person, Nikhil Gupta, or with his handler back in India, who is allegedly Vikash Yadav, and that they are part, if you like, of the same larger conspiracy which targets different members of the Sikh referendum effort.
Absolutely. Now, how does this establish a connection between the Indian intelligence and Nikhil Gupta? If you can elaborate on that.
What we've seen in the court filing in New York there is that there are WhatsApp chats. They are not transcribed like the wiretap is transcribed in the court filing that we've seen so far, the pre-trial motions. In the case of the wiretap, of course, that's not directly involving Indian intelligence. It involves a sort of a cutout, you might call him, Nikhil Gupta, an international drug trafficker and gun trafficker as described by US authorities, and the middleman, of course, in this alleged conspiracy between Indian intelligence and the killers or supposed killers in New York. And what we have instead for the actual communication between Gupta and the Indian intelligence side of things are these WhatsApp chat logs, which are only described, not transcribed in the court filings, but where they clearly discuss things like handing over guns as part payment for the killing of Pannu in New York after it takes place.
Right. So, what are your expectations as a seasoned journalist? Will it really help the investigation here on this side of the border?
I mean, we have to assume, of course, that the elements that are going to be presented in this trial, most of which were gathered back in 2024, have been in the possession of Canadian police for a long time. And back when I was first covering this investigation into Hardeep Singh Nijjar and talking to investigators, they made it very clear to me that there were elements of their case that were sort of homegrown, that had been gathered by the RCMP here in Canada, and that there were other elements that came from outside. And of course, that is primarily this investigation in the US, which it seems was triggered by the DEA as part of a drug investigation. This came up almost accidentally in the course of a drug investigation into Nikhil Gupta, where he then proposed to a confidential informant working for the DEA, not the FBI, Can you find me a hitman? So we know that there are elements of this already, but we also know that Canadian investigators have had them for a long time. So I don't know that it would necessarily move the investigation in Canada forward any more than it already has advanced. I think it continues to advance, but for other reasons that have to do with what investigators are finding here. But what it will do, of course, what it will affect more, I would say, is the ability of the Indian government to deny involvement in the Nijjar case. Already, we've seen them take a different tack with the Panu case, which they have conceded was done by an Indian intelligence agent, but which they've described as a rogue agent, and the Nijjar case, where they sort of just denied all involvement. And this, by linking the two cases so clearly as part of the same conspiracy, alleged conspiracy, the New York trial makes it difficult for the Indian government to make different claims about them in that way.
Right. Now, how far this can really go to make the Indian intelligence accountable, if at all this video is admitted as an evidence in the court?
This is a difficult question to answer. And I think that one of the things, I would say some people may even have been surprised that US prosecutors chose to make these allegations against the Indian government so directly. The Indian government is not on trial directly in this case, and neither is Vikas Yadav. Even this supposed rogue agent is not actually on trial in this case. So there was some question about whether US prosecutors needed to bring in those elements to secure a conviction against the person who they're actually prosecuting, Nikhil Gupta. That question has been answered, though. They did bring it in, and they made the argument that it's an intrinsic part of the case that can't be left out in order to fully understand the case. But we all knew that, of course, there were political pressures that went in the other direction. The United States was seeking a rapprochement with India at the time that all of this was happening. It wanted India's help as a counterweight to China. It wanted to expand trade with India too, but above all, it wanted India in the Quad. It had strategic reasons for wanting to be friendly with the Modi government. And there was no secret that at the time, these two things were pushing against each other. The need to seek justice in this conspiracy case and the need to be friends with India. So there was always a question about that. And of course, Canada faces exactly the same questions and pressures. On the one side, there's a desire for normalization with India. On the other side, there's a desire for justice in the Nijjar case, and more importantly, to make sure that it can't continue to happen. So those tensions remain unresolved. But what we have seen in this case is that the US government is not putting politics first. In the Panu case, it certainly does appear that prosecutors are proceeding independently of any of those kinds of pressures, and that they're going to bring in any evidence that they feel they need.
So, Evan, what are the chances of Vikas Yadav being summoned?
Well, that's a good question. He hasn't, as far as I know, being formally called as a witness, because we just haven't reached that stage yet. But would he come? Would India force him to come? India has shown some willingness to, if you like to use the colloquial expression, to throw Yadav under the bus. It has shown some willingness to do that by declaring him a rogue agent. But it has also seen some pushback on that from Indian nationalists and also from people, for example, in his home village, Yadav's home village, who felt that he was being set up to take the fall for performing what they saw as his patriotic duty or following orders that were assumed to come from above. And of course, that interpretation is in line with what Canadian investigators believe too. They did not believe that Yadav or that anybody at the lower levels of the research and analysis wing was operating independently as a rogue agent. They very much believed that this was a conspiracy that went to the top of the Indian government, and I know that because they told me so. So I think that India will face a difficult decision if it's asked to extradite Yadav. It's the kind of extradition that would irritate the most nationalist elements that support the Modi coalition.
Right. Now, Evan, I have a bonus question for you. Your take on the recent visit of Anita Anand to India, where she had a very cordial meeting with Modi and S. Chandrasekhar. Your thoughts on that?
Well, there we see the other side of the coin for Canada. In addition to the desire to get justice over Nijjar and to ensure that it doesn't happen again, there is a very obvious desire to normalize relations with India.
Right.
The Indian government hasn't. We've had real tensions with India that have led to the expulsions of ambassadors, high commissioners, and so on. So Prime Minister Carney has made no secret that he would like to move past that. We're seeing that in that visit, which we're told did not really talk about these issues. And of course, Anita Anand seemed to say that the Indian government did not want to discuss the Khalistani issue or the referendum issue. But of course, the Indian government isn't the only one that sets the agenda. Canada could also, if it wanted to, discuss those issues. I think what we saw really is a desire by both to leave it in the past. Whether they're able to successfully do that will depend on what happens next. If Canada continues to suffer from the kind of influence operations or even criminal attempts that were described by the RCMP last year, because they talked not only about the Nijjar case, but other killings, and they talked about a campaign of violence across the country. If we continue to see that kind of thing, and if extortion or arson attacks, for example, continue to be linked by Canadian investigators to the government of India, then it's going to be very difficult for normalization to proceed. If, on the other hand, all of that comes to a halt, I think that both countries have shown a pretty clear interest to move on.
Right. Now, how much the new geopolitical alignments can really influence the outcome of this case?
Well, the Panu prosecution is going to, I think, proceed as just a normal criminal trial. All evidence is that prosecutors want to get a conviction and that they don't mind dragging India into open court and talking about the Indian government's role if that helps them to secure a conviction. So I don't think that the court ruling suggests, or excuse me, the court filing, the pre-trial court filing, I don't think it suggests that prosecutors are really thinking about those political considerations. I think it suggests the opposite. But of course, the conviction of Nikhil Gupta is not a conviction of the Indian government. It's a conviction of a person who the Indian government was simply using as a cutout, allegedly. He was never an employee of theirs. And so how much it will change their standing in terms of deniability remains to be seen. I think that they can probably live with a conviction in this case and just continue to move on in the same way that Saudi Arabia was able to move on following the killing of Jamal Khashoggi.
Absolutely. Well, Evan, it was nice talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. It's a developing story. We might have you back on air sometime soon. But is there anything I didn't ask you before I let you go?
No, I thought you asked some very good questions, and it was a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much, Evan. Talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
Sam.
Bye for now.